Billy Napier and his staff are under pressure like very few could ever know. But one person who does have the insight is joining us today to chat about what it's like being on staff at one of the top programs in the entire country. Let's talk a little bit about Billy Napier. What's your initial perception of him?
So I've never met Billy Napier other than we played Alabama in 2014 for the national. We did. It was for the national championship, but it was the semifinal,
Right.
and he was the receiver coach there. And that off season, randomly, this random Michigan coach started sending out like propaganda to recruits about like my inexperience, and a kid that was going to commit to us sent it to me, and I blasted it on Twitter. I forget the guy's name. I think he's the head coach at Arizona now. Oh, Jed Fish, clown show, like a clown coach. And he sent it, and I blasted it on Twitter. And Billy Napier, for no reason, I mean, nothing but a handshake. I've never even talked to the guy. He reached out and sent me a message and was like, "Hey, I saw that's such Bush league," and he wrote me like a long message about like my players, how they played, how impressed he was, how much respect he had for me, and that was my first interaction with him. And I was like, "This guy's a really, really good guy." And we know how he was as a coach, the job he did, at whatever Louisiana directional school it was, UL Lafayette or Monroe or one of those. He did a really good job there. I think he's a really good football coach that took over for an absolute train wreck football coach. I know Dan Mullen as good as anyone in the world. What Billy Napier, I honestly equate it to what Mike Norvell had to do. He walked in after Willie Taggart, one of the worst football coaches I've ever seen in my life. And it's like, it's such a train wreck. Let's just give him a decent amount of time to try to right the ship. And we see what's going on with Mike Norvell. Like that program's trending in the right direction. Like I said on my show 3 years ago, it would. Like, I think Billy Napier is a really good football coach. I know he's a really good guy. I think he's going to need some time because the coaches that were at Florida with Dan Mullen said he was on autopilot the last like 18 months, like didn't recruit, didn't do shit. And the program looks like it.
So that kind of leads into my next question. Do you think UF does give him enough time? I mean, you were there, you know what the pressure feels like. Do you think the administration at the athletic department allows enough time for the turnaround?
I mean, Florida, athletic departments like Florida or Ohio State or any of these schools, they're kind of a product of what has happened to them recently, right? Like when Urban first came in, they were dying to get back to Spurrier days. And then when they did, it was like nothing was ever enough. Like if you weren't undefeated, win a national championship, like complete failure, fire coaches. And you're like, timeout. 3 years ago, like you were in the Gator Bowl, relax. But it's just, they're a product of the recency bias, right? So I think that right now, coming off of the Dan Mullen failure, they'll give him another this year and the next year to kind of hope for that momentum that you see at Florida State, that you see at LSU. Like they'll give him the time to at least show that nugget, right? Where it's like, look, we're heading the right direction. Things have turned. Like a little more time and we'll get there. Now, if they don't see that, if he has another year like last year, they're going to blow it up. They're going to blow it up.
Okay, so you alluded to a little bit the pressure to win at UF and the outside noise that takes place. What specifically was the administration or the athletic department like to you guys? Were they really like, okay, well, if you're not undefeated, you're going to have to send some people packing? I mean, was the pressure that immense?
It wasn't from the administration. I mean, the administration under Urban era, at least, they were like, holy shit, we got him. Like we got the guy. It was more the fan base. It was more the radio shows, the Orlando Sentinels of the world that were constantly trying to. You're watching it at Georgia right now. Yeah. The Atlanta Journal Constitute or whatever that is just all of a sudden like trying to tear Georgia to the ground. And you're like, what is going on? Like you didn't care about Georgia 4 years ago. Why are we talking about Kirby Smart now? It's like when you achieve that level of, you're kind of seeing it at Michigan. They've had issue after issue this offseason. And if you pay attention to sports media, you're like, no one wrote an article about Michigan ever for the last decade. Right. And now they're in the news constantly. So the pressure wasn't from Jeremy Foley or the administration. They were thrilled. I mean, we won 2 national championships in 06, 08, and we were in contention in 09. And I mean, they were very happy with the Urban Meyer tenure. It was the pressure from outside the walls that you could feel bearing down on you.
And did that impact the way that you guys did things, or were you pretty good at being able to block that out?
No, I wouldn't say it impacted anyone except for Urban. He read everything, he heard everything, he felt that pressure. I mean, shit, he almost died, right? He had whatever his, I don't remember if it was brain, heart, lungs, whatever his issue was at Florida that had to call the ambulance. Like he was, he listened to it, read it, and just he obsessed over it, like his own image, his own reputation, his own like his legacy, like that. He still is obsessive over that, and he felt it. So I guess in turn, by osmosis, we all kind of felt the wrath.
Mhm. So, from what little you do know about Billy Napier and what you have seen, do you think that he has the ability to turn it around at Florida if given enough time?
It's going to come down to recruiting. I mean, nowadays with NIL, I mean, it's still on him. The onus is on him to turn it around. I mean, DJ Lagway is a huge get. They need a quarterback. And,
Yeah.
and we could talk about Anthony Richardson, which I'd rather not do on a Gator podcast because I have my own feelings about him. But like, they haven't had a Trevor Lawrence or a Justin Fields. Like, they need a quarterback for starters.
Mhm.
And DJ Lagway might be that. I mean, I've watched his film, believe it or not, which I don't normally do, and I think he's fantastic. I think he's a phenomenal player, and that's kind of the vibe I get from all the Florida fans that listen to our show is like, yeah, but just wait, DJ Lagway will be here eventually. It's like, all right, I mean, that's what, a year from now.
But you don't want to start him as a true freshman anyway. I mean,
So now we're
particularly
talking
not
2 years out. Like, how much time we giving him, right? I don't know if Billy is the guy on the recruiting trail at a you know, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Ohio State. I'm not saying he's not, but
Mhm.
with the transfer portal nowadays, he came out and I can't remember the kid's name. He got the kid from Ohio State, Graham Mertz. Like,
Mhm.
who are we getting out of the portal right now? Graham Mertz was average as shit at Wisconsin. The kid, his name's slipping my mind. The kid from Ohio State that got beat out by C.J. Stroud was average at Ohio State, like
Miller.
Jack Miller.
Yeah.
It's like no knock on them. They're fine. They're fine players, but they're not Justin Fields. Like, you need to go in the portal and go get Sam Hartman from Wake Forest, who was outstanding, goes to Notre Dame. Like, nowadays with the portal, we don't need the excuse like, hey, no, we got this kid coming in as an 18-year-old next year. Like, whoa, timeout. That's great for next year, and really in 2 years,
Mhm.
go get a transfer portal kid that's a stud
Yeah.
and show me you can do it now, because we're in the era right now with NIL and transfer portal where you can go get anybody if you're good at it, if you're good at recruiting and your NIL's in line.
Yeah. Well, right now they're sitting with the number 3 class. We'll see as the season goes and if that holds. Okay. So when you were at Florida, when I was at Florida, social media was kind of a thing that was more for college kids. I'm pretty sure you had to have like a college email to be able to be on Facebook. That's totally
Right.
dating both of us. Sorry. Um, how crazy do you think it would be if you were at Florida during this social media frenzy? I mean, it's a
Oh,
24/7 news cycle. Everything is available instantaneously. Everything you do. Can you imagine
no,
what went
no,
on there if social
no,
media existed?
no, I can't. I mean, there's two things immediately that hit me when you just asked that, and one is, as good as Urban Meyer's staff was at recruiting, they would have only been better, because I don't know if you know the lineage of what happened with recruiting, but when we came into Florida in 2005, you were a I'm sorry, you weren't allowed, but you weren't not allowed because texting wasn't that popular. You
Right.
could text kids whatever you wanted. And so Urban and the whole staff immediately, they were, I mean, relentlessly 24 hours a day texting recruits. And you had Bobby Bowden and Larry Coker, two really old guys at Florida State and Miami. And it was like they got livid because Urban started beating their ass in the state of Florida because he was working so much harder. Young guy, right?
Mhm.
Knows how to text. Bobby Bowden didn't know how to text. Love him. Great coach. Hall of Fame. One of the best ever. But he's not sitting there on his phone at 10 p.m. texting recruits like Urban was. So Bobby Bowden and Larry Coker and a couple other older coaches got it. They banned it. They made it illegal because of Urban.
Right.
If social media was like it is now back then, I mean, they would have ended both tenures immediately because those guys weren't going to be on Twitter, Instagram. Like it would have been nuts. The other side of it is, if cell phones with video were a thing, oh, this documentary would be so much cooler. Like you would have videos of some of the most outlandish shit. Some of the stuff that
That or
I
people
saw.
would already know all the things.
Oh my gosh. It was, I mean, some of the stuff that went down was like, if that happened today, there'd be 7 videos of it.
I'm really glad, for one, that there was not really social
Right.
medias back then. Thanks, Zach, for joining us. Hopefully, you've enjoyed these last few videos we've done with him. If you missed our chat about Jeremiah Smith and what UF can do to flip him, click right here to get caught up.